Welcome to episode 50 of the Guna Fanzine Arsenal Women podcast. I can't believe, Daisy, it's almost a year keeping these going every week since we first did the idea last year. You couldn't make episode 49. Tell us why.
Well, I've just about got my voice back. I think you can probably hear in this, especially if you're listening to this episode. But a lot of singing, a lot of chanting, a lot of recovery, not a lot of sleep. Flying back the day after and then straight to the Emirates for a while until a few days ago. I hadn't been home yet, so I'm still in recovery from that. But yeah, I was sad that I couldn't make it because it's the one episode where I think there was just so much to talk about, so much to say. And I'm still now processing it. So to be honest, it still feels like it was yesterday to me. So yeah, just about getting over it, but I probably never will, to be honest.
Tell me about your time in Lisbon because me and Izzy were both in the press box, and I'd love to get your perspective on because at full time there was just a couple of seconds where I looked at the away end and thought I would give a lot to be in there right now. And I said this to Izzy last week, we're so lucky to be up in the press box, but there was just that one moment where I thought, God, I'd love to be in that away end.
Yeah, definitely. I always think it's great to like be in the press box, but you know how much I love kind of away, like not really an away day, but you know what I mean, being away from home or being in the away stand, and we were definitely outnumbered massively by Barca fans, but it never feels like that really. But yeah, to be honest, there was a lot of nerves. It was really, really hot. If you remember back to Leon, the whole of the stadium was kind of in the shade except one part where the Arsenal fans were. It was pretty much the same. It felt in that stadium. We were kind of in the heat. It had been obviously a long wait for the game to kick off, and we'd been up since the early hours of the morning, couldn't really sleep. But obviously, the disallowed goal we celebrated ridiculously. The Cena one, and then again when we thought it was the final whistle. I don't know if you guys clocked it, but there
Yes,
was a
yes.
moment where we thought it was the final whistle, and someone's drink flew past my head, and I still think about the person who lost their drink for a foul that was given to Barca. But no, it was just incredible, and you can tell by the way that I talk about it that I haven't been able to kind of actually put it into words or be able to process that I actually was there and I actually saw it happen. I think a lot of the time you kind of be a little bit pessimistic to try and stop yourself from being hurt or being let down, and you go, oh, it's just Barca. If we lose, it's Barca. But never did I plan for a scenario where we'd go back to Pink Street after, or we'd celebrate in the stadium and we'd be winning, and then we would have actually done it. And I think we didn't really prepare for that situation, but it was just incredible day experience. Not just the actual game, not just the stands, but everything around that. I mean, you saw the streets after. I've never seen anything like it, and I never thought. I did know we had a huge following. Obviously, I've advocated for that, but to see that many people in one street singing with you, understanding, what it felt like, it was just it's hard to put into words, to be honest.
Yeah, well, you've done a good job of trying. There's some lovely articles you put up on the Guna Fanzine website that I'd urge people to go and read. And I put some of Susie's pictures up yesterday of the Arsenal fans, and it just makes you emotional because you sort of zoom in and you just pick out individual people's faces and people in tears, people hugging each other, the various emotions, people and just picking them out in Susie's pictures, and there's just some wonderful photography. And we'll be showcasing it all soon. More details on that to come out. Izzy, you're in your England top. For those who are listening, I guess we'll do a bit more in the international break next week. But can we just give a mention for these Arsenal players who, like Daisy, have been out partying and they've had to go back to playing international football? And from what I've seen and sort of read over the last weekend, there were a lot of outstanding performances. I mean, Katie McKay, player of the match for Ireland, fair play.
I know it seems crazy, but I think I heard a few of them saying like this is our job, this is what we do, and I think they all snapped straight into international mode the minute they all got to their respective camps and stuff. So, yeah, I mean, hats off to them for coming off the back of such a huge win, and then it looked like they all had some really lovely receptions when arriving in their various countries for their camps, which was so nice. Lots of guards of honor going on, and some really genuinely pleased teammates for their friends who'd had such a huge success. Then we saw in the England game Chloe Kelly getting a goal, Beth
Mm.
Mead as well. I mean, just yeah, amazing. It just shows what talent we have in that Arsenal side and how hardworking they all are to be able to pull off Champions League win on the Sunday and then win with England later in the week. So yeah, crazy.
There'll be Sunday league players listening in who are going, we have a good night out on Saturday, play Sunday morning hungover. You know, the professionals should be able to do it. The Katie McKay with the bottle of water going through the Guard of Honor. I think Risha Littlejohn gave it to her. That was really good. And yeah, big game this evening, England and Spain. Plenty of you will be listening after that. And yeah, Marion, very, very praiseful of Chloe Kelly yesterday, which was excellent, as was Serena Wiegman as well in those two press conferences. And let's start. There was a question, actually. We're opening this episode up for a Q&A. Thank you to all of you who've got in touch. At IA Guna Beach has said, given the on and off field success of Chloe Kelly's return, which prodigal daughter would you most like to see the club bring back next? So I'll take that to mean a former Arsenal player who's gone elsewhere and you'd love to see bring back. Now, Izzy, I'll start with you. The one, I know she plays for Chelsea, but I guess when we have these conversations, Lauren James is always going to be a name that's thrown around, isn't she?
Yeah, definitely Lauren James. I mean, I think she's a bit too injury prone though, which is a real shame because when she's not injured and she's fully fit, she's absolutely brilliant and she's a real threat. I mean, you just don't know what she's going to do next. She's very unpredictable, amazing with her feet. Just, yeah, a real asset to any team she's in. But she seems to be injured a lot, so maybe we wouldn't want her part of the Arsenal setup where there are a few other injury-prone players anyway. We don't want to add to that pile. I don't know who I'd like to see come back. If you're, are we saying it has to be someone who was there when they were much younger, or can it be someone that's left recently?
I get, yeah, it's hard, isn't it? Because the only one I was thinking, and Daisy will get to you, was a player I'm a big fan of and have covered a bit this season when I've covered Leicester and the Lionesses is Ruby Mace. And I actually think she's done really well in terms of moving on from Arsenal. Didn't quite work out Manchester City. She's gone on to Leicester as a perfect club. And I think if she improves and improves, I could see her maybe returning. And this is only, me being a fan of her. She's so versatile. I mean, she's played defence, midfield and up front for Leicester, made her England debut this season. That's sort of a player who I think fits that category of, leaving Arsenal at a young age and then going on elsewhere. Who would you be thinking, Daisy?
Again, yeah, it depends if we're looking at it from like a young player maybe came through sort of academy or in like you say younger days. But if we're thinking in general, I'm still holding on for this Van de Donk thing that I'm seeing everywhere. I think left Leon, hasn't she? And now she's leaving Leon. She was one of my favourite kind of players when I first started getting into it, and I watched a lot of her, and I've seen a lot of rumours of her and Ellie Carpenter potentially moving over to England, and a lot of stuff about Michelle Kang trying to get her to come to London City Lionesses. But I really enjoyed kind of her time at Arsenal, and she's one of kind of the players that I enjoyed watching a lot. So I don't know if that's kind of cheating with that answer because she obviously wasn't academy player, Arsenal born and bred, but she's definitely one of the former players I would like to see return. But I'm aware that she maybe is also getting on a little bit. She's probably not going to have many years left in her career, so probably a terrible bit of business for Arsenal. But if we're being a bit more emotional about it, maybe I would possibly say that.
Any other ideas, Izzy? It's difficult. I mean, like, they're almost the players who have left recently, where you go actually in a few years, like a Katrine Kuhl, if she goes away, does really well. Maybe you feel it's a player we've let slip. I don't know. It's a difficult question.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that came to mind when you're talking about players leaving and I was going to say Rafa.
Mm.
I just think she was just brilliant to watch, and a real favourite amongst fans as well. And obviously having loads of success in the NWSL, but I think that she would be a great person to bring back to the side. But yeah, I can't really think in terms of academy players. I think we'll probably know in a few years the ones that we've let slip through the net and who go on to be very successful. Maybe Gio as well. We'll just have to wait and see with those players that have
Too
recently.
soon to say Taya Goldie because we've just let her go, but I can see her really sort of coming into her own well, I'm presuming London City, obviously that's not confirmed, but if she just kind of signed a permanent contract there, I'm thinking she was one of the ones that I'm upset we didn't really give her much of a chance.
Yeah, I think it's the thing of Arsenal, isn't it? Is when you are one of the best teams, you are going to let very good players go at the same time. You see it in the academy, sort of the players that get released every year, and Yeah, Taya, we know she's not had that luck with injuries. Loved, I walked past her on Pink Street. She was out there with friends and some of the Katie McCabe's Island teammates as well. And I was just thinking, what a brilliant season. You know, you get to celebrate promotion yourself with the club you've gone on loan for. And then you go back, you get a lovely farewell at the Emirates, and then you get to go to Lisbon and basically celebrate your parent club or former parent club, and some of your friends and teammates winning the Champions League. I mean, she's had a great time of things. Talking of Katie McCabe, Sam at Timbalum Sam said, excluding the Champions League win, what was your favourite moment of the season? I'll allow Katie McCabe celebrations at the Emirates as an acceptable answer. And the good thing is when you win the Champions League, you have a long journey to get there, and that provides a lot of even more enjoyable moments at times, certainly in terms of the actual football when you look at a game like Lyon. Daisy, what stands out for you apart from that Champions League win?
I think you've taken one of the first ones that came to mind. I can't not mention Leon. You know, I've spoken so much about that before the final. Definitely one of the standout kind of away days. I should probably give a better answer than that though, because I always do go to Leon. And ones in the Champions League are obviously going to be kind of your favourites. I really enjoyed the last game of the season. I thought that was some of Arsenal's kind of better football that I'd seen. And obviously, I like when we beat teams like Manchester United. And I really, really enjoyed that game a lot. And I think it was one of the best I've seen at the Emirates. I also enjoyed the North London derby at the Emirates. I think that was a good atmosphere and obviously a huge day for what we did with the Gooner fanzine, but also what we did, what I did with speaking at pitch side and things like that. So personally talking, that was definitely up there as well. But yeah, I think there's a few that stand out definitely.
Izzy, any?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think similar to Daisy, I've loved all those ones at the Emirates. Northern and Derby was special, first time in the Emirates press box, and amazing crowd, amazing atmosphere. Loved that. But I mean, like, if I'm thinking personally, just going as a fan, when I went to the game against Rangers at Meadow Park in back in September, and I took five of my friends who had never been to it. Some of them had never been to a football match before, never, definitely not Arsenal women. So I, yeah, took five friends to Meadow Park, put them all in Arsenal shirts, and showed them what it was all about and what I was so kind of invested in, and what I love so much about it. So that was definitely a highlight of the season because it was nice just to for my friends to sort of understand why I was so obsessed with this football team. But yeah, that was great, and a really big scoreline win. So I'd say that was one of my favourite nights.
Yeah, from a journalist perspective, I absolutely loved being at London Colney the day Renee Slagers was confirmed as the manager. So myself and Leif drove over, and there was a really sort of strong media presence. It was open training. We found out about that early on in the week, which gave us the indication that there was going to be an announcement on Friday, because you never get open training for WSL games, and Arsenal sort of made the exception. And it was just such a busy day of being there, as you'll know, is he producing content. You're in that sort of media room with loads of people. You're in the press conference, and then they said, "Oh, who wants to speak to Leah Williamson?" And I could have snuck in the back of Mikel Arteta's press conference, and then they said, "Well, it will clash with Leah Williamson's sort of round table, where a few of the written journalists get to go and speak to her." She was really generous with her time, asked her some questions, and it was just. I remember getting home absolutely shattered, because after a hard day's work, and it really was, and that really stood out to me as being, that I sort of could imagine doing this a bit more, when you look at the journalists who get to do that every week. And so I really enjoyed that from a media perspective. But then I know it's a poor answer, because it's basically the runner-up game to a final when you win the semi-final, but that second leg in Lyon, and just the is this really happening? It was a bit of like some of the emotions that would come out in the final were definitely starting in that second half in Lyon, and yeah, that was fantastic. Um, Another one from Torquay Groundhopper said, "What have been your favourite things about covering Arsenal this season?" Any trends, I guess, sort of about what it's been like, or I guess how do we make that answer now to that question different to picking a highlight? Anything generally that we've really enjoyed?
Oh, it's a tough question. I think watching the kind of growth of the supporters club and the work that they've been doing. I mean, that is obviously something we've mentioned before. It's not a new idea at all, I've been advocating for all season, but seeing that build up to the final, and I had a conversation with Farah, and it was just we just embraced each other, and it was just pure emotion. And she said to me, she said, look around, like look at what we've done, in Pink Street, look at all these people that are here. And I think to the journey from the start of the season, there was a lot of doubt at the start of the season before Renee, not just obviously about the football that was being played, but about the atmosphere at the Emirates. Had we got this wrong with, we spoke about this at the start of the season on the podcast. Have we got it wrong with the bring the noise section? Is this going to be a really tough season for Arsenal, and are we not going to be able to build on the highs that we've seen with attendances and fan and building atmosphere the year before? And I think looking at what we've achieved now, obviously it's huge for the club and huge for the players to achieve that trophy, but it is a huge catalyst for Arsenal for next season. Obviously people go regardless of results, but when you win something like the Champions League, what you can use that for to build women's football is huge, and build the fan base up, and obviously build on the club. Obviously will back us even more now. It's bad to say, but it is true, and we'll get kind of more opportunities and more chance to grow the fan base. So I think seeing that firsthand and going to so many games and experiencing that as a fan has been, the highest of the highs of sitting in Meadow Park when we lost, we came out of the cup competitions, sorry, the lowest of the lows when we came out of the cup competitions, and we didn't know what was going to happen next to the Champions League final. It really is kind of amazing to see sort of the progress that's been made.
Yeah, I think one thing I'd give a massive shout out for is the meetups,
Yeah.
both domestically and in Europe, and speaking to the people who make these possible. So the level of detail that goes into, we all see just a Twitter post to say go here, meet up here, and I try and tag along as much as I can. But the work that's done to sort of research these venues, I think it was in Madrid, wasn't it, Izzy, when we said to some of the locals about where the meetup was, and they've gone, oh, that's one of the best pubs in Madrid. How on earth did you find that? And it's just, they don't just pick the first Weatherspoons that they see. There's so much work that goes there. There's the organisation. I think the Lyon one, that place initially they weren't going to serve food, and they said, look, there's going to be so many Arsenal fans coming, you're going to be making some good money if you serve food. They negotiated it to open earlier, I think, on that occasion. I think that's been massive in terms of giving that away community sort of a place to go and somewhere to meet up. But and the work that goes in behind the scenes, I think massive shout out to the supporters club and the people who do that.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with that. It's been amazing to see, and I just think that the atmosphere is just getting better and better, and it's always been the best atmosphere in the WSL for sure. And I think other teams know that. They all, if you hear other players saying, "Oh, the Arsenal fans, they are incredible," and they really are. And I think it's just every time I go, I'm thinking, yeah, this is the best atmosphere I've ever had. And it just at each time I go, it changes, and I think that is just so cool, and it's a real kind of credit to everyone who's working behind the scenes to sort that out. And I think it's great that the club are listening to the supporters club and trying to make it better as well, because without that collaboration, that wouldn't work, and you'd just be, it would all be a bit disjointed. So yeah, it's really obvious how much work's been going in, and it just is done so well this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Another one from Chris at Talkie Hopper 12. Having now won the Champions League, where does Kim Little rank amongst Arsenal's greatest players? Angarad wrote a lovely piece for your outlet, Daisy, Beyond the Pitch, which I thought was just brilliantly written. About sort of Arsenal's understated hero, Kim Little. And look, she's captained the Gunners to Champions League glory. She's going to be right up there now in terms of the best of the best.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the reading the piece and being able to publish it, and obviously we've talked so much about Kim and written pieces probably ourselves and discussed it with different people, and I think that has been the one thing that's come out of the Champions League win. It's been, she always gets kind of recognition. She is one of the greats, and I think no one's shied away from saying that long before she lifted that Champions League trophy. But it almost felt like an understanding collectively between the club, between the players. You saw Leah in that huddle saying, after Leon, let's go and do this for Kim. Like the respect, and also now the fans, and even beyond that, not just Arsenal fans, everybody else has come out and said that about Kim. And it's, you shouldn't need a Champions League win, you shouldn't need a trophy. She shouldn't need to prove that in any way, because every single game, she shows up, and she always has. And injuries have been tough at times. I think the start of the season we wasn't sure. Kyra came in a little bit, and we started to say maybe this is the end. And all of a sudden she comes back, and you can't get her out the team again. So that's just the most Kim thing, and it's just the most incredible thing that we get to have someone like that as our captain, and just the way she goes about everything is just so effortlessly, and so much talent. For me, obviously, watching Arsenal in more of the modern era of my time and when I got into women's football, obviously Kim is going to rank the highest, because I just wasn't around to see those and watch them every single week, and obviously it wasn't as accessible. So I think definitely amongst sort of people who started watching recently, she's going to rank very, very high on that order of Arsenal greats, and deservedly so.
And she's almost that link between the 2007 team and this year's team as well. The fact she first signed in 2008, and I think there's a bit of that in Renee Slagers as well. And I love the fact that Arsenal got the 2007 winners and Vic Akers, and to come in and have lunch with the team. And I've only heard about sort of how humble and respectful the team and Renee were, how much they wanted to learn, from the people who came in, and just wonderful. There are so many connections, I feel like, between the two, and they both ended 1-0 to the Arsenal, as I also love. Joseph Rosedon, Guna contributor, said, as a result of the Champions League victory, what should the expectations be going into next season? Izzy?
Well, I think we slightly touched on it a bit last week, but I do think that if you can overcome Barcelona, then it just says a lot about this Arsenal side and how tenacious and hardworking, and how they're able to see those results through and get those wins. And maybe we've looked at Chelsea and gone, they're always able to find a way, but perhaps we need to look at Arsenal and go, they should always be able to find a way, because they did against Barcelona, against Lyon, against Real Madrid. We've seen it time and time again this season, but not domestically. And I don't know whether it's the fact that they all work really, really well under the pressure of the Champions League on the European stage, or I can't put my finger on what it is, but it just hasn't gone so right domestically for a few seasons, apart from the odd Conti Cup here or there. But I think that if you've won a Champions League, you've got to strive for more than that. Trying to win the WSL would be absolutely incredible. It will be sort of 6 years since the last WSL win, I think, this season. So that would be really important. I think people look at Arsenal as one of the most successful clubs in English football, but that's probably soon going to not be such an association because they haven't won stuff domestically. So I think it's about doing the right business over the summer, getting the team in shape, ready off the back of the Euros. Hopefully they'll all have played lots of minutes, hopefully no big injuries or anything, and going into next season and starting from match day one, because I think this season we'd basically lost the league by week 4 or 5, and that can't really happen again. You want it to go down to the wire, you want it to be exciting, and that's what I'd love to see from Arsenal next season.
Yeah, we'll probably talk more about how Arsenal do that, because it is, in my perspective, it's going to be an Arsenal-Chelsea two-horse race, to be honest, unless we see a fair bit of recruitment from Manchester City, who did underperform. I don't think Manchester United are quite there yet. Of course, could be wrong on that front, but it's going to be about closing the gap on Chelsea. But as you say, once you prove you can beat Barcelona, taking that back in domestically, you put the pressure on yourselves, and that's what Arsenal need, and teams can wake up and see what Arsenal can do now. But I think there's also people upstairs at Arsenal who will now realise the potential of this team, and that they do need backing over the summer, which a lot of questions will come on to now. Shan at AWFC McCabe, any thoughts on how we manage our midfield next season? Kim will probably play less minutes, but Marion has been playing deeper. We've also got Kyra Cooney-Cross and Pullover, and possibly a 6 coming in. It's always an interesting topic, isn't it, Arsenal's midfield, because there is the experience of Little and Valty. There's this new dynamic in what Mariona has offered, but then there's also the players who we really want to see in Cooney, Cross and Pullover. Going to be a big season in the middle of the park, Daisy.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, excuse me, it is really hard to call at this stage what Rene's going to do. I spoke a little bit about on the most recent pieces. What do I think will happen with certain players? Like, will she continue with what's worked, or is it time to start thinking about other things? I think she's got a chance to experiment a little bit more because obviously when she came in, like we were saying, every single game was a must win, right? She didn't have any options really to rotate, maybe in a few different games, but then it was risky to disrupt the rhythm. So given the opportunity that we've got in those cup competitions early stages, we can see how even when Kyra can perform at the very top of her game week in, week out, nobody is safe. She still came out of that side. Obviously, a lot of people were questioning that and questioning Renee's decision with that, but ultimately it did pay off because she managed to find that midfield that worked and it worked on the biggest stage. You don't just kind of drop players like that. I expect that Leah Volti will still be the biggest question mark for me because I don't see how she gets into this side right now. Obviously, with Palova and Kyra, I see an opportunity for them to play certain games, to rotate, to be able to learn the roles so that we can have different people but still play the same system, which I think is what Rene's going to have to try and perfect. It's what Sonia, I think, has done magnificently well, and I will praise her for that. Is no matter who comes in, you don't just change it, you don't just lose or drop the standards just because you've got a different striker or a different midfielder. If we could get six or five or six of them to rotate but still understand each other and still work well together, it'll be about those partnerships that work. I just think potentially, if Leah Volti does stay and she is part of that squad, she'll see less minutes. And I think that Kafaji is obviously a question mark for everybody. Potentially that's either a loan or not playing in midfield because it's going to be hard for her to kind of get in amongst all the others. But I do hope that we see time for Palova and Kyra, because I think they're key players. I don't want Arsenal to kind of lose them to a lack of game time.
Yeah, big season in the midfield. We are pushed for time, so we'll sort of try and get through some of these as quickly as possible. At Hale End AFC, recruitment wise, who would you like to come in as champions of Europe? I expect there to be high ambition. We also had a question about sort of bringing in a left-footed centre back. Izzy, what are the areas, I guess, first before we maybe look at specific players that Arsenal that you'd like to see investment in?
I'd like to see there's a lot of talk about bringing someone in to play in the six. I think we've said the midfield's quite covered, and I think if you can rotate people around there, we have got enough coverage in that area. There's been a lot of talk about bringing in another pacey winger, which could be helpful. Obviously would be great to tie down Chloe Kelly on a permanent deal. I'm sure everyone's just waiting for that. I'm hoping that is going to be the case. I'd like to see another person who's able to play in the 10 and a sort of strong 10 because Frida Marnham's been excellent this season and she is good at especially dragging people out of position and stuff. But it also always seems to end up with Russo dropping back into the 10, which we've said time and time again we don't like to see. It's not her best position. I know she is really good at holding the ball up and stuff, but it'll be really good to see someone else, maybe a completely different style, who's able to play in that 10 position for those games when Monham's unable to do what she does best and to offer an alternative kind of form of attack, because I think that is really important and that maybe link up between the frontline players, and it'd be great to see someone coming in and offering something different, basically.
Mm. Linking to that from the same question, integrate Michelle Azimang in the team next season or give her another loan? And a question about a possible loan for Katie Reed, Daisy. I'm definitely in the keep Azimang around camp. What about you? I mean, she's playing for England now.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen many people actually going for the loan option. I think every time we've spoken about it, we've spoken about needing more options up front, more attacking options. Not necessarily straight for Russo every single time. We've seen kind of Stina and Russo play together for periods of a game. Again, this is something I think they should utilise with Michelle. I don't see her really turning down an opportunity to stay at Arsenal either, especially if she knows she's going to get an opportunity to play minutes and prove herself. She potentially really wants to stay here and build a career here. We're pushing for Arsenal to try and keep as many academy players as they can and actually give them a chance at Arsenal and especially if they've got the talent and the ability. So for me, I'm a keep Michelle Agyeman and I'm a keep Katie Reid person, just because obviously Amanda Ilestead leaving, and if Arsenal do sign what I think they should sign, a right back to cover Emily Fox, not to replace, but to give her a bit of a break here and then, it might be worth considering someone who can play in multiple positions on that back line, a centre back, right back kind of style. Just because I think obviously Katie Reid has the ability, but you kind of need another person in there, maybe more of a senior figure or experienced, slightly older, just so the pressure's not on her all the time. And I prefer her to play at centre back anyway. So yeah, I definitely think we should be keeping quite a few of the players, and maybe just trying to build on that and bring in a few more reinforcements.
Mm. Dan Graham said we know of the three players leaving, likely more. Who do we hunt in the market, or do the young players still get their chance and we hold off till January? Does feel like even though Arsenal won the Champions League, Izzy, I think the pressure is still there for this to be quite a busy summer, would you say?
Yeah, I think it needs to be a busy summer. Um, Obviously, you don't want players to leave, especially the ones that have been there for ages, fan favourites who are really integrated in that setup. It's about working out what the best outgoings and incomings are, because I think that in order to do well domestically, Arsenal do need to make some significant signings, because yes, we've won the Champions League and that team is brilliant and they'll go down in history as being a fantastic squad, and everyone loves them. But I think we're going to need some options, as Daisy said, back up for Emily Fox. She's played pretty much every minute this season. It's just not, it can't be sustainable for forever. So just backups in other positions, a bit of competition all over the pitch, because I think some of the players, they just know they're going to be starting, and it can maybe get a bit complacent, especially in those WSL games against slightly lower table teams when Arsenal might turn up and go, we should win this. And then we've had some bad results there. And I think that might be due to a complacency and a lack of sort of people pushing for your position. And I think that would be really important to see. And I'd really like to see that, because we've got Jenna Niswonger. She spoke about how she is really trying to push to show that she can start at some point. And I think what we've seen of her has been really promising. She's obviously competing with Katie McCabe, who's brilliant, but she's got a real attitude of wanting to be a really good backup option and to push for that starting spot. And I think we need more players like that, with that attitude, who can come in and offer something like that.
Mm. Daisy, Hannah McIntosh has asked, who has been your most improved player for Arsenal from last season to this season? Difficult one, this, because I think so many of these players have improved. Who would you pick out from this season?
It's so hard to say improved, because I think obviously when we're talking about like players that have been really good this season, it's hard to use the word improved, because obviously you could say, I spoke about Steph Catley obviously coming into a new position. Wouldn't really know class that as improved. Obviously she's been fantastic, but I think she's always been great. I'm going to say from last season, I'm going to say Caitlin Ford. I'm going to praise Caitlin Ford again and again and again, because last season I think she knows that she wasn't at her best, and there was a lot of unwarranted hate going around about her, and potentially, as soon as anyone doesn't perform, that everyone's like we should sell them. But to come back in from that and perform at the level that she has and not get the praise that the others are getting, I think she's just been consistent. And on the biggest stage in that Champions League final, she really showed up in a way that I've never seen, not just in the way that she played the game, the system, but the passion and the tackles that she, we're going back winning the ball. I just think it's been an incredible season for her, and I think she's gone under the radar massively, and it's a huge improvement from what we saw last season, and kind of going back to her best, really.
I'm just consulting my Champions of Europe poster to remind myself of the squad from Matthew Wood design. This is excellent. I think I've given it enough of a plug already. Yeah, Caitlin Ford was my unsung player of the season as well. Most improved player from the start of the season for the rest of it is Alessia Russo for me. I think when you look at her transformation under Renee Slagers, I think it's been absolutely remarkable. It's been huge. Any other players you feel, Lizzie, have really come on under Renee particularly?
I think I would have to give a shout out to Leah Williamson, because I think she's come back from her ACL injury January last year, and a lot of people questioning her form, and is she as good as people think she is? And we've seen ups and downs in her form and her injuries and things. But I mean, coming into the end of this season for England and for Arsenal, she's just been fantastic. And I think she's really seems to have a good bond with Renee. She always spoken about how confident she feels under Renee, and how Renee helps her to understand that, like, to manage her emotions when it comes to playing for the club that she loves so much, and also being able to sort of stay calm under the pressure and perform well. And I think that that's really come out, and that's really, something that we've all been able to see. And her performance in the Champions League final was just absolutely incredible. And I'm really looking forward to seeing, going into next season and the Euros as well, how this form will continue, because I think she's been fantastic.
Yeah, agree with that. She was absolutely phenomenal in Lisbon. We are out of time. If we haven't answered your question directly, hopefully we've covered it. Izzy and Daisy, thank you very much, and speak next week.
Yeah, thank you.